last time we were dealing with the two classes of knowledge, right? So which are those? You have the mediate knowledge and the immediate knowledge. What is the difference between mediate knowledge and immediate knowledge? So mediate is dependent on the sense organs, whereas the immediate, as we see, is something that comes other than the sense organs. Okay, so last time we dealt with the first one, that is Avadhi, that is clairvoyance. So let's begin with this quickly and then move to the next ones. So first and foremost, we said that Avadhi refers to the ability or to gain knowledge of objects that in a way are not perceptible to the normal senses. That means I see something but immediately I cannot see it that clearly, something beyond. Okay, so in a way it is objects Okay, so this allows us to know objects that are beyond the ordinary range of our senses. Now it is said that this comes, or person is able to reach this stage when he is partially liberated from karmic influences. So we all know how the karmic particles, when they get attached to the soul, they in a way prevent the soul from functioning at its full potential. So now we see that over here the person is able to know objects that are at a distance or even certain minuteness of the objects. So this knowledge is direct, and in a way we see it bypasses the ordinary sensory experience. But at the same time, we should realize that this knowledge is not infinite, and therefore it is limited to specific type of information about the physical world. So let's take a look at an example. So last time one example that we dealt with was, there is a person who is standing and there is a building in front of him, and without entering the building, from a distance he can know physically what is there in the building. For example, he can know how many chairs may be there, how many tables are there in the room, etc. So in a way he is able to look at details which otherwise he may not have been able to perceive with the normal eye. Okay, next another example that we came about was about Jesus knowing Nathanael under the fig tree. He had not seen him there, but in a way he was able to kind of say that yes, Nathanael is there under the fig tree. So here we see that in a way, without direct sensory experience, person is able to have access to knowledge. So now what is the significance of this first kind of step of this immediate knowledge? So we see that this represents a significant stage in spiritual development. That means the person needs to in a way grow in this spiritual journey in order to reach to this first stage. And then most importantly, this in a way is still limited. It is not the highest form of knowledge, but in a way it is the first out of the three. Now, the next one that we will deal with is telepathy. So sometimes you may have realized that the other person already knows what you have been thinking. Okay, or sometimes you yourself can already guess what is going to happen or what the person has been planning something about. This basically is what we call as telepathy. So this is in a way a direct knowledge of another person's thoughts. Now it is said that when the person is in a way free from hatred, anger, jealousy, etc. Okay, so it is generally said that these are in a way obstacles that prevent us from knowing the minds of others. So when a person is free from hatred, anger or jealousy, he can in a way get direct access to another person's thoughts in the present as well as in the past. So therefore this is called as Manahparyaya, which means entering a mind. Okay, and therefore here we see that the soul has direct knowledge. So again it is direct knowledge without the aid of any senses or the mind. It's a kind of a direct knowledge. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So as we have said, it allows us to access the mind without any physical interaction, and this basically refers to the past as well as present mental states. So let's take an example. Suppose if your friend is thinking of a surprise party for you, okay, for your birthday or maybe because you have won some competition, etc. Now, a person who has already reached this stage in his spiritual development is able to perceive the thoughts of the others, will be able to directly understand what the person has planned, even if the person has not shown any signs. Even if there are no hints that are given, clearly the person will be able to understand what the person has been planning. Next we see that the person is also able to retrieve or understand the past thoughts of someone who may not be living as yet. Okay, so what happened in maybe 10 years ago in this particular place, what was the person thinking? Person will be also able to get that kind of insight or understanding. So in this way, it is not only about the present, but also it leads to the past mental states as well. Next also it is said that during conflict situations, this is one of the practical applications. So during conflict situations, a person with Manahparyaya will be able to exactly know what is it that is irritating the other person. In the sense, you are having an argument with your friend, okay, and now you will be able to know the true feelings, what the person feels or why is he doing certain things, what are the motivations behind his argument, and this can help resolve certain misunderstandings. So therefore, when we look at telepathy as such, this in a way comes as the second stage of immediate knowledge, as you would call. The first would be Avadhi or clairvoyance, and the second is telepathy or Manahparyaya. Now we see that this itself is not the ultimate, okay, it is still limited compared to the highest form of knowledge, and that is Kevala, that is omniscience. So this refers to the perfect, all encompassing knowledge. So in this way we see that when all the karmic particles, all the karmic impurities are removed from the soul is able to get, or soul is able to actualize that perfect knowledge or the absolute knowledge that it has. Okay, so imagery, this would be like the sun brightly shining, there are no clouds in order to obstruct the sun rays from reaching the ground. Okay, so the soul is completely free here from all karmic impurities, and this is the highest stage. Okay, this is the third stage and the highest stage of spiritual development. So in this, in other words, we see that this is characterized by complete and unlimited understanding of past, present and future existence. Okay, so in a way, if you look at examples, we can see that a person may be able to understand every detail of the universe, why certain things happen, what is the nature of every object, or he may be even be able to understand the connections between certain phenomena. Another example here would be that the person will get a complete understanding of karma and its consequences. Okay, as we had seen in Buddhism also, when Buddha had reached that perfect stage, okay, of enlightenment, it is there that everything became clear to him, right? He was able to know how attachment in a way leads to the whole cycle of birth, rebirth, etc. Similarly here also, when there is complete knowledge, okay, when you have this perfect knowledge, you are able to understand the small connections which otherwise you may not be able to understand. So therefore this is this third kind of stage in the immediate knowledge. So now we need to move towards the mediate knowledge. So as we said, omniscience in a way is like the top of spiritual development, the pinnacle, and it is also signifies complete liberation, and it is also the highest level of consciousness. So now in the mediate knowledge we will see that you have the use of the sense organs as well as the mind. So you have mati, or also you call it as mati jnana, which basically is known as sensory comprehension. That means you rely on your mind as well as the data that you receive from your sense organs in order to get knowledge about the things around you. So here we see that the sense organs, that means all the 5 senses of sight, sound, touch, taste and smell, along with your mental processes, gives you the reality what is there. So in other words, it is generally how we interpret and perceive the world around us. So for example, there is this table over here. I can see the table, I can touch and feel the table. Okay, now all this information in a way goes to my mind, which processes it. So the sense organs tells me what is the color of this table? Brown. Then through my touch I can feel that the table is hard. Okay, if you go to smell it, you would get a typical smell either of wood, or if varnish is put, you would get the smell of varnish. So using all these, putting all these things together, the mind constructs a picture. It is just example of, you have seen Lego, those small pieces which yellow, blue, green, okay. So you join those pieces together in order to make something. Similarly, we'll show after this, okay. So in other words, the mind also puts these things together in order for us to get a clear picture of something. Now it is said that here also there are certain processes, okay. So there are 4 stages that are involved. So the first is sensation. So this is the initial sensation or initial experience, sensory experience without understanding. Okay, so for example, if there is a bird that is flying, okay, so there's the building, you are here and you see a bird that is flying in the sky. So here you are just looking at the bird, you see the bird, but you have just seen the bird. It's only at that level. The next stage is speculation. So here you try to form questions in your mind, okay, about what you have seen. So what is it that we have seen now? The bird. Okay, so now you try to ask the question to yourself, what type of bird is it? Okay, you try to kind of question about it is okay, it is green in color, okay, it is long, okay, and it is flying very fast. You try to question about what you have seen. The next is judgment. So you now basically make a decision based on what you have seen as well as what you have speculated or what you have questioned. For example, if it is green, if it is in a way an elongated shape, okay, you now make a judgment or make a decision that, okay, this is a parrot. If it is in black in color and it has the particular cry of the crow, you know that it is a crow. Likewise, sparrow, owl, eagle, etc. Now comes the fourth stage, that is of retention. Now, once you have already made a decision, you know that this is a crow, you store that information. Now, the next time you see something like a parrot, you know it is a parrot, you know it is an eagle. Okay, you don't have to go through all these stages once again. It is immediate retrieval from what you have stored. Okay, so these are the 4 stages that we have when it comes to sensus cognition. Similarly also, let's take an example of music. Okay, suppose you are walking in the corridor and you hear a particular sound or a particular music. So, what would be the first stage? Try to apply this now. Apply these 4 stages to the example. So, what would be the first stage? Hearing that music or hearing that sound. Okay. Next would be questioning. So, what would be the questioning there? Okay, so first would be, okay, is it, which language is it, right? Okay, and then, okay, have I heard it? And what, then also you will be trying to guess, okay, which movie is it, etc. Then finally, what is in the judgment, what will happen is, you narrow down, right? And you say, okay, this is from this particular movie, this song is, any example, okay? And then finally, retention. The next time somebody else plays it, you immediately know that it is that song. Now we see that you also have apps doing that, right? Music Match, you just kind of open the app with the sound and it immediately tells you what music is. Okay, so this is with regards to the with the mediate knowledge, mati. Now we see that this is a kind of knowledge that we generally use in daily life, okay, and it helps us to understand, it helps us to interact with people as well as with day-to-day objects of our surrounding. So this is practical kind of knowledge that we have, and it is dependent on our senses as well as the mind. Next is the Shruta Jnana, and this is knowledge obtained from authority. In other words, it is knowledge what is heard from others. And this would include knowledge that is either spoken or written. So now here also we see that the sense organs and the mind are important, because to hear something you rely on your auditory senses. To read something you use your sight or use your eyes or the visual sense. Now here we see that any understanding, whether it is a spoken authority or written authority, is dependent on the senses, and therefore we see that this Sruta Jnana comes after Mati Jnana. That means it comes after Mati, that is the first step of knowledge or senses cognition. So here we see that what are the authoritative sources now? Any idea what could be these authoritative sources? No, let's talk about common now. See, let's take for example what is there in this classroom. What would be the authoritative sources here? Books, okay, good. Now, why books would be authoritative sources? Okay, so in a way, it is written either by an expert or by a person who has sufficient understanding of that particular concept. Okay, therefore he has some authority over it. Now, any other things that we can find in the class? Okay, the teacher also could be, because in a way he also would rely or base himself on the books and also on certain kind of knowledge that he has learned. Anything else can we see? Okay, the students' discussion, if it is based on already something that is previously learned. So for example, just discussing what I had for breakfast or what will be there for tea will not come under authoritative sources. So if the discussion is based on what was done in the last lecture, okay, or okay, what is the, take a concept, what is mediate knowledge or immediate knowledge, then it becomes an authoritative source. Okay, so here we see that this involves perceiving as well as understanding. So let's say for example, you take a textbook and you begin to read. Okay, let's say for example, a history textbook. So in Mati, that is senses cognition, you are just reading the book and you understand the concepts. Now here in Sruta Jnana, this knowledge that you get is coming from certain experts that have written this book. Certain experts in the field of history who have written this book, maybe about the independence or maybe about the whole struggle for freedom. Similarly, we see that when we listen to any spiritual leader, okay, if there is a talk, if there is a kind of a reading of the scripture, that also in a way becomes Shrutanyaya, because here we see that the knowledge that is there is coming from certain authority or certain experts in that particular field. Okay, so here we see that this is considered valid as long as the source is reliable. Okay, that is why it is dependent on the authority of the experts. So here we see that in the possibility of error, is in a way quite high in Mati as well as in Shruta Nyaya. Yeah, in the sense, when we look at the immediate sources of knowledge, there is no possibility of error over there. Here we see that since these are based on your senses and your mental activity, there are possibilities of error. So let's say, for example, if you are not able to see clearly, okay, some people have the short-sightedness, right, or they cannot see long objects clearly. Supposing if there is an object at the back, okay, now if the visual sense is slightly impaired, that means not working properly, you may not able to clearly see the shape. Okay, so in a way it may lead to a negative judgment or a different judgment of that particular object. Similarly, if you are not able to hear properly, suppose somebody telling something at a distance, you may not be able to understand or you may miss out certain words. Let's say, for example, if all your senses are working properly but you are feeling sleepy, okay, so you are not able to make sense of what is happening around. So in a way it can lead you to assume something different than what is intended. So that is why we say that the possibility of error here is higher than the immediate sources of knowledge. So now we see that knowledge again can be divided into two: Pramana as well as Naya. So Pramana will refer to knowledge of a thing as it is, whereas Naya is knowledge of a thing in its relation. Okay, so first let's take a look at what is knowledge of a thing as it is. So here we see that there are three kind of pramanas, okay, when it comes to knowledge as it is. So first is perception. For example, there is an apple on this table. Now, from your direct sensory experience, you are able to perceive that this is an apple by looking at its color, by looking at the shape. You know that it is an apple. If there was an orange or if there was a watermelon, you would be able to make the difference. Why? Because you have perceived it through your senses and you have come to the judgment that it is an apple. Next is inference. Okay, and here we see that you infer or you make your judgment based on certain facts. Suppose you are going for a walk and you see there is smoke that is coming out from one particular area. So you can assume that either there was a fire or there is fire over there. So in philosophy you will also see that there is a saying that where there is smoke, there is a fire. Okay, so this basically in a way is an indirect knowledge. Why? Because you have not seen the fire, but looking at the smoke, you are assuming that there is a fire or there was a fire. And the third is testimony. This also again in a way refers to knowledge from credible sources. And this is accepted as valid because it is based on factual evidence as well as expert knowledge. So in a way similar to the Sruta Nyaya, based on authority, based on what the expert has said. The next is Naya, that is interpreting from different viewpoints. In other words, this refers to a different perspectives that we can have in life. So this helps us to look at things from different viewpoints and tells us that for a particular subject there need not only be one perspective. So let's take for example, if there is a glass of water on the table, okay, so from a scientific viewpoint, what is this? Suppose there is a glass of water on this table here. From the scientific viewpoint, what will you say? Yes? It is H2O, okay? So from a scientific viewpoint, you will say it is H2O. You will also say how it is formed and you will state that it is in a liquid state. Now from a practical viewpoint, how would you look at this glass of water? Okay, drinking water to quench the thirst. Then so if you take for example a philosophical perspective, you can talk in terms of purity or essence, etc. Okay, so for example, let's take for example this laptop here. From a scientific viewpoint or from a technical viewpoint, how will you look at it? Okay, electronic gadget. Then those who have some knowledge will also say that okay, it is this particular kind of series, it has this RAM, so much storage, etc. Okay, from a practical viewpoint, for a viewpoint of a person who is working, how will he look at the laptop? Okay, helps for work. From a working perspective, helps him to do his presentations, helps him to analyze data, etc. Okay, from the perspective of any ordinary student or scholastic, how will it be seen? Okay, so we see that a particular object or doing homework, doing assignments, etc. Okay, so it has that different, so you can look at something from a different perspective. And lastly, we take a look at valid versus invalid knowledge. So this basically, there is a simple explanation for this. Valid knowledge, which is in a way leads to a successful action. It represents reality as it is. So for example, touching something hot and realizing that it is hot. Okay, so you touch a stove and immediately you know that it is hot. That is a valid knowledge. We see that invalid knowledge, on the other hand, fails to lead to effective action. In a way, example, you think that touching this hot stove will make it cold. Okay, that would be a invalid knowledge. So here we see that in invalid knowledge, there are three divisions that they make. One is doubt, mistake, and indifference. So for example, doubt. Imagine that you are traveling to one particular place and you don't have your Google Maps with you, you don't have a map with you. Suddenly you reach a particular place where there are 4 roads. Now you do not know which road to take. Okay, so there's a doubt. Should I take this road? Should I take the left one? Etc. And there is no donkey also nearby to allow you to lead you. So there is a doubt. So in a way, there is a conflict in judgment. Next is a mistake. Suppose there is no power, you are walking on the corridor and you find something that is long, you step on it. Okay, and you think it is a snake. Then suddenly you remove your torch, phone, and you look at it, oh, it is a rope. Okay, so here in a way we see that there is a mistaken perception. Okay, suppose somebody has dried his cassock on the terrace over there and you go, you are not getting sleep, you go in the night, suddenly you see something white, you get scared. Why? You think it is a ghost, but it is just a mistaken perception. And finally you have indifference, that is, for example, a person is seated in the class or is seated in maybe for mass, etc., but mind is elsewhere. Okay, so the person is not able to make sense of what is happening around. So in a way, this could be either lack of interest, where the person does not engage with the material or with the situation. Okay, so this is in a way the forms of knowledge that we have in Jainism.
Seems like saying I do not take any decision.
Yeah, that also will come under indifference. In the sense, you are not, in a way, you are not interested. Indifference is basically what? Whether there is holiday, there is no holiday, for me it doesn't make any difference. Okay, so you are like on the fence, like okay, anything is okay in that way. So this also basically lack of interest. Why? If you are really interested in doing something, then either you would want yes or no. Well, since anything is okay, that means okay, whatever happens is okay for me. So in that way, indifference, we can say that. Okay. Yeah, so these are the questions that you can reflect on. That is, just take this down. What is Manahparyaya and how does it differ from other forms of knowledge? Next is, how does the concept of Pramana, okay, that in Jain philosophy, ensure that knowledge is valid and practically applicable in real life situation.